The Autobahn, or Imperial Highway System, was the official name of the German highways under the Nazi regime. After previously opposing plans for a highway network, the German government embraced them after coming to power and presented the project as Adolf Hitler's own idea. They were termed Adolf Hitler Straßen or Adolf Hitler's roads, and were presented as a major contribution of the regime to the reduction of unemployment in Germany. Other reasons for the project included enabling Germans to explore and appreciate their own country. When the work ceased in 1941 because of World War II, more than 3,800 kilometers had been completed. A speed limit of 100 kilometers per hour had been imposed in May of 1939 to save fuel, but during the war this was lowered to 80 kilometers per hour, and private cars were allowed on the Autobahns only in exceptional circumstances. By the middle of the war in 1943, traffic was so low that even bicycles were permitted. Planned as civil and military traffic arteries, the possible use for setting up provisional airfields was not initially planned at all. However, towards the end of the war, when the number of still intact German airfields continued to decline, the Luftwaffe High Command quickly became aware of this possibility, and the motorways quickly gained importance in this respect as well. The then brand new jet fighters, such as the Messerschmitt Me-262 in particular, benefited from a paved and sufficiently long runway. A runway of 1,700 meters in length with a landing strip of 350 meters was required for the new German jet fighters. These emergency airfields were called Notlandeplätze auf Straßen, or emergency airfields on roads. In addition, there was the possibility of storing newly produced aircraft camouflaged on the side of the motorway and taking them off immediately when required. Especially from 1944 onwards, when more and more aircraft returning from the front had to be accommodated at the few airfields of the ever-shrinking Reich, new possibilities were sought. The Allies also recognized this very quickly and undertook appropriate reconnaissance flights. The British intelligence compiled lists about the Luftwaffe emergency airfields in the last year of the war on the basis of statements from German prisoners of war and their own area reconnaissance, so it can be assumed that their list of German emergency airfields was incomplete. The Allied reports also mention suitable sections that were not used as airfields at all. However, the knowledge gained was once again useful for military purposes after 1945 with the start of the Cold War, and it was not long before the first so-called emergency motorway landing sites were set up. The places listed in this table are not to be understood as one square each, but rather as a section of motorway on which several squares may have been located. In the event of crisis, a large number of NATO units would have been stationed in the area of the former Federal Republic, including of course fighter and bomber squadrons. These would have required airfields, and the air bases and civilian airports might have been not sufficient. Emergency landing sites on newer motorway sections were almost always planned in the rough routing of the respective motorway in cooperation with the military authorities. This could go so far that entire sections of a motorway had to be laid out completely differently than in the original civilian plan because of the emergency landing site. As the photo shows, the planning of an emergency landing site always included a traffic-friendly bypass so that all traffic would not come to a standstill when it was used. The guidelines for reconstruction of such bypasses were also included in the Traffic Control Guidelines of May of 1968. Part of the financing came from the Ministry of Transport funds, of course, but with significant subsidies from the Ministry of Defense and the NATO infrastructure program. The construction of an emergency landing site itself was then monitored by the Civilian Construction Management in cooperation with the responsible Military District Command and other military authorities. The respective motorway maintenance departments were responsible for the maintenance, and their staff were also responsible for repairing damage and carrying out repairs in the event of an emergency. In the area of an emergency landing site, almost everything was subject to strict conditions and restrictions. In the yellow strip zone, 50 meters to the left and right of the runway, and in the blue transition zone, 200 meters on either side of the runway and the approach sectors, structural facilities and devices of all kinds above and below the ground surface, as well as changes in the design of the ground, were prohibited. In the red approach sector zone, no structural facilities and devices of all kinds above the ground surface, if they extended beyond the approach sectors, rising to 45 meters, were permitted. The same situation would have occurred on the other side of the Iron Curtain, where Soviet troops would have been drawn into the area of the former GDR. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you want to support my channel, check out the PayPal donation link in the description or consider becoming a member. To make sure you don't miss my future work, subscribe to my channel and press the bell notification button. Thank you and see you in the next video.